welcome back to my YouTube channel. Aya! So I think I pretty much need a intro to this video because if I don't, then there's not going to be any context. But last week I had a conversation with the YouTuber Jeremy Hannaford. I will leave his link in the description below. Make sure you go subscribe to him. And we talked about Supernatural. The reason why I did this is because one of you guys suggested it, so I will put the comment on the screen. And two, I thought it would be cool because if you guys know me, you know how much of a Supernatural fan I am. I am a gigantic Supernatural fan. I cry over the show all the time. I love it. It's great. But Jeremy, on the other hand, is a little bit more critical of the show, so I thought having both opinions kind of going at it, like against each other would be kind of cool, and I thought it would make some good content. Just a little disclaimer, this video was taken over a Skype call, so there are a few moments where the video may lag a little bit, so I apologize. I tried to fix it as much as I could while editing, and while we're on the topic of that, I just wanted to say there are a few parts that I did have to cut out due to the fact that there was a issue with the Skype call recording thing, so there's a few things that did get left out. But you have a full hour of us talking about Supernatural ahead of you, so enjoy. Would you like to introduce yourself for the third time?
My name is Jeremy. I've been a Supernatural fan ever since I watched the season finale of the first season. That was the first ever episode I ever watched. Been a fan of it pretty significantly, even when I moved to up north to be a newspaper writer into a town that had absolutely horrible Wi-Fi. I didn't have Wi-Fi at home. I was able to watch the season finale in a cafe for 11, and just been I've admittedly become a lot more critical of the show, but I still watch it because I want to see this end. This is the only television show I've ever watched in its entirety live. I've fallen off of every other show, so yeah, no. I'm a fan. I'm a critical one, but I still am a fan of the show.
When I've seen your videos, I can tell that you do really enjoy the show, but you are very critical, and I like that you don't hide your opinions from that. As for me, I'm just like, I love Sam and Dean no matter what, blah, blah, blah. So that's why I kind of wanted to make this video with you, because I've seen your videos, the ones on Supernatural, because Supernatural's like the only show I watch. And like you said, you do seem to be pretty critical of the show as of late. But as someone who wholeheartedly loves Supernatural, I wanted to see where we agree and disagree on certain topics and things like that. Because honestly, Supernatural could be Castiel sitting there eating cereal in front of the camera, and I'd probably just still watch it, just for the fuck of it. But, but I thought this would be interesting. So, anyways, I wanted to go over some points that you also made in your videos about Andrew Dabb being the worst thing that happened to Supernatural and your season 14 review. So I think we should start with some basic statements or opinions on the show before we really go into that. So we just start off at the top and then just kind of dive in. So I hear from a lot of people who don't like the show that Supernatural should have ended after season 5, considering it was Eric Kripke's original stopping point. I'm not going to say ending because that was kind of debunked. Now I obviously don't agree with that, but I wanted to hear your take on it and how you generally feel about the show during Eric Kripke's era and then after Eric Kripke's era.
Well, I guess at the time I was a bit conflicted because of how well everything was being set up in 5. I was like, okay, I can see this as an end. I can see how this is going to be the finale. But at the same time, I did want it to continue. I was really excited for season 6. I took some trip down to the Olympic Peninsula or something. It was a horrible trip, but I still was somehow able to watch the episode live. But in terms of actually a solid ending, I do feel 5 should have been the ending. 5 set up everything. Everything from season 1 to season 5 was just this connected story, this connected sort of narrative. And even though it wasn't that idea from the first place, I don't even think they had the idea of an angels and demons really, even when they started the show. But it's like luck, basically, luck falling into place. And they had that throughout the first 5 seasons. Season 6, I rewatched it recently, and it's not as bad as I thought it was. I don't like the grandpa angle still.
Yeah, I never liked that part.
And up until that point, I'd always found season 7 to be one of the worst seasons because So many episodes would start with Dean or Sam on the phone with someone saying, "You got anything on Dick?" Well, we've got Dick on Dick. That was actually a funny joke. And then, but then it would then progress to a filler episode, and there were so many filler episodes that would start the exact same way that I was able to figure. It became a staple mark, a very obvious staple mark. And then I feel it got better with season 8. I remember there was when Andromeda or Amara, whoever was the Amanda Tapping's character, the big higher up in heaven, Naomi, yes, when she can. Oh well, yeah, and she in season 8 she convinced Castiel to kill Dean. I'm trying to remember the storyline, but
Dean was like, sorry, I cut you off, but Castiel was like brainwashed by Naomi because the stuff with Purgatory happened, and he came back, and then he also took on Sam's like Lucifer thing in season 7, and then after that, Naomi like helped rebuild him essentially.
yeah, as a
But
tool.
programmed him more to work for her and the Angels instead of Sam and Dean.
And that was that was the best episode of the show in my opinion since season 5. As I remember being like, wow, that's actually like really intense. I'm actually kind of very interested in where the characters go. And to be honest, I don't remember much of 8, 9, and 10. I They're very blank seasons for me. I know about the whole closing the gates of hell. I don't even remember when Kevin Tran died. That's it.
Season 9.
Yes. And then season 10 had Demon Dean, which was cool, but then it was solved in 3 episodes. And I remember
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, okay, that was kind of boring. And then season 11, I loved season 11 because it was a grand opus. It was a grand opus in my opinion, and just it was obviously taking a lot of notes back from 5. When you rewatch it, there's a lot of parallels to 5, but it was setting itself up as a finale. But then Carver, either because he didn't want to finish it or because he found out that the show was going to continue regardless, he's like, well, okay, well, there's no point. I've set up this finale, but it's not happening. So he left. So 11 was the last season that I would say that I would have been satisfied with the show ending. But going back to the original question, yes, I feel 5 should have been the ending because you don't want things to drag out, which unfortunately Supernatural has in the last while. You can look at shows like Dexter, for example, X-Files, How I Met Your Mother. There's a lot of shows that have fans, and the popularity of them they're very high, but unfortunately sometimes you can't continue a narrative. You're just going to drag that meat out, and that's why you need to have a definitive ending. Like, look at Breaking Bad, right? Breaking Bad was hugely popular, but Vince Gilligan knew when he wanted to end that. So yeah, in closing note, I would say, yeah, 5 should have been the ending. Was excited to see the show continue, but if it had ended with 5, I'd have been very satisfied with that.
So, while I do agree that season 5 could have been a really amazing ending for the show, I am very glad that we got past that. I mean, the only episode that I really, really disliked from like season 6 and 7 was probably season 7, Time for a Wedding, because that episode made me want to like die.
Yeah, she was
And
quite
even
annoying.
then, I still fairly enjoyed season 7 to a degree. I wasn't a huge fan of the Leviathan plot, but I was a fan of the whole Sam has his soul back and is now dealing with the whole Lucifer stuff. But I feel like season 6 and 7 get shit on a lot just because those are the 2 seasons that come right after season 5. So it's kind of like I would assume season 6 and 7, or at least the way that I think of it, that's kind of like Supernatural trying to get back on its feet after you just had this killer finale, and it's like, what now? You know?
Yeah, no, exactly.
I will definitely say, though, that those 2 seasons were a lot weaker than compared to season 3 and 4 and 5. But I also think that it is a pretty hard thing to continue a show after it's come to an essential conclusion after building up to that main arc.
Exactly. Look at what happened with season 12 after season 11. It was just, you go from literal deities fighting for the universe to a bunch of British men of letters. It was it was not a good transition.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why. I mean, I've enjoyed every season of Supernatural, honestly, but season 11 is pretty low on my ranking just because I don't like the transition from season 11 to season 12. I enjoyed having Mary back. It was a nice kind of like, oh, this is weird, but like I could see
Hmm.
this work. But then she kind of really didn't have a
Didn't
place.
do anything after 3 episodes. She was gone, and then essentially she was useless for the rest of her turn in the entire show.
Yeah, Mary being back was kind of more like a thing that they could take away to hurt Sam and Dean, like they did in
Hmm.
season 14. Um, but yeah, I think that's where I'm at with that. I obviously don't think that Supernatural should have ended at season 5. It would have been a good ending. I'm just hoping that season 15 can outdo Swan Song. But I'm not sure about it. Talking on the topic of seasons, you said that season 11 was the best. So what are some of your best and worst seasons?
Um, for best ones, obviously 5 is the best one. I feel the entire show. 3 is my favorite one. I really liked the very personal story between Sam and Dean, with their whole Dean having 1 year to live and them going through all these motions to try and save Dean. And there's even that where they find the doctor who's basically the Frankenstein thing, and they have a way out, but Dean doesn't want to do it. Um, I also say that season in particular is a pretty good feat for the guys because that was written during the writer's strike, and there were so many other shows that absolutely shit the bed during that year. Like Hero season 2 was an absolute disaster from what I've heard. I didn't watch the show, but I hear a lot of notoriety about that season. I love 2. I've rewatched 2 the most out of all of them. And then 11, I did like 11 because I thought it was going to be a finale. So I would say 2, 3, 5, 4 is decent, and so is 1, and 11. Aside from that, like for bad seasons though, well, 8, 9, and 10 are kind of forgettable. But in terms, at least I don't remember the story narrative having so many issues, so many dropped aspects, and so many retcons as the last 3, particularly the last 2, have had. And I've not been very happy with the writing for the last 2 in particular.
I think that season 13 and 14 have had a lot of retconning. Some acceptable, some not. You were about to say something about season 12?
Well, season 12 started off not too bad. It like again, like even with a weak main villain, there were still decent episodes. And season 12 also had Forgetting Dean, the memory loss episode. That's the last time I've ever given a Supernatural episode a perfect rating. Um, it dipped though. The ending, I still say, is one of the worst finales they've ever done. That finale was so stupid.
I actually didn't even have my YouTube channel at the time of season 12 finale, whatever. um, but yeah, I was not a gigantic fan of the ending of season 12. Just because it was just like, what the hell is going on? Like, apparently Lucifer has a kid. There's a tear in the universe. We're like, it just introduced a whole new pool.
Deus Ex Machina's everywhere.
I don't know how to pronounce that, but I do know what it means.
Plot conveniences, just convenience, 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 convenience.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I personally think, going back to the topic of seasons, season 8 is actually my favorite season of Supernatural.
Really? Oh, that's the first time I've ever heard of that one.
Yeah, yeah. Very uncommon opinion I've noticed. But I know that season 5 is like the top tier season for anybody. And like, if you took the Supernatural fan base as a whole and you asked them what their favorite season was, it's obviously going to be season 5. But some of my other favorites are season 4 and season 2. But I really did enjoy Sam's arc, particularly in season 8, because I think it had a great build up and also connected with a lot with Sam's character, a lot with the things he did previously leading up to the trials. Uh, like I said before, my least favorite season is season 11. Uh, I think season 11 was good. Don't get me wrong. But the whole God and Mara plot, like you said, it felt like a season finale, and that's something that I didn't personally like. So I think we can just agree to disagree on that. But it kind of did. You're right, though. It did kind of leave Andrew Dabb to kind of continue whatever they had left,
Yeah.
and that's a hard thing to do, you know.
Oh yeah, he was given a situation that was literally impossible.
Yeah, but he tried. um, I honestly don't think they should have touched God's character until the very end of Supernatural, like they did in season 14, for example. So, yeah. Because I feel like having him just kind of like in the background for the entire time until like the big moment would have been a lot better than having him already have an established character and then going towards the retcon. It's like, you know?
Well, that's I think that's what it was. The initial idea was 11. I think Carver did set that up as the finale, and I know a few people who have worked on the show. It's filmed out here in Vancouver. There was a mentality after season 6 that each season, at least from 7 up to 9, no, up to 10, the boys didn't even know if this was the end. One of the guys I've worked for, he worked on season 9, and they all thought that was the last season. They all thought that the show was going to end, and then all of a sudden CW is like, yeah, you guys have another season. They're like, oh, shit.
No, yeah, because I know that the way that Supernatural gets renewed is that it gets renewed, it gets greenlit for one season at a time. So it's always kind of hard to like jimmy your way over here and be like,
oh, it's a horrible narrative practice. It's a cool idea. It's great to hear it, but from a narrative perspective, like the writers want to like probably they're playing a Russian roulette game, waiting to see if are they going to end it or are they not.
Yeah. Which is why I like the idea that now that season 15 is confirmed to be the last, they have this whole season, like they know it's going to be the last one. They already built up to what is going to lead into season 15, so I'm hoping that this can be really good,
Oh yeah, for sure.
Let's go into repetitive plots. That was something that I wanted to talk about a little bit. One of the main plots that I hate that has been repeated over and over again in the show is Lucifer coming back over and over again.
Yes.
I love the show, but the only good thing that came out of Lucifer returning was Jack. And I've said this once, but I will say this again. Lucifer is the literal herpes of Supernatural. It's like, oh, he's gone?
He's coming back. Yeah, no, that's a very good analogy for that.
Yeah. But I think the Nick plot was like one last attempt to make Lucifer have a spot on the show again, which I hated because I had a lot of high hopes for Nick.
Oh yeah, no, they had a potential to do something with it, and they just ruined it. And admittedly, the whole idea of him being alive in the first place was just absolutely moronic. Oh, he was stabbed by an archangel blade that saves the vessel. Okay, but he still got stabbed in the goddamn heart.
Yeah, like Lucifer's already dead. How is there any possible way that he's alive?
And then also, why couldn't they just use the logic of turn the knife around and just stab Dean?
Exactly.
Dean would have been fine.
Exactly. Well, the Archangel Blade has to be wielded by an Archangel, but if Dean had control over his body, he could have just stabbed
himself.
And then we wouldn't have even had the Michael plot.
No, exactly.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I liked the idea of, oh, there's an Archangel Blade? What? But then it's like, the vessel survives? That's never happened before with the regular.
And then it just drops off the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm. Like that, even with the demon blade that Sam had, Ruby's blade, like when you killed the demons, the person that they're possessing also
died.
So that's like a huge retcon that like I was like, what the hell?
They kept on finding a way to bring him back. Apparently, Robert Singer's wife, who's the producer of the show, always tries to find a way to bring Mark Pellegrino back, even if it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I love Mark Pellegrino. I think he's a really good actor.
Oh, he's doing great. Well, like Mark Shepard talked about how in season 11, or was it season 11? No, season 12, where he keeps him as a captive. He admitted that it was just stupid.
Yeah,
he admits that it made no sense to his character, but he enjoyed doing the same scene 47,000 times with Mark Pelleringo.
No, yeah, the whole thing. If I remember correctly, we're talking about Lotus when Lucifer possesses the president, and then Crowley uh, tampers with the spell. That was
Yeah, and he keeps him.
out of just nowhere. That's like so out
That
of
isn't. It
character for
did.
Crowley.
Yeah, even Mark Shepard admitted that. He's like, it doesn't make sense to what I'm doing.
No, yeah, exactly. So I think, yeah, I'm glad that we both agree that the whole Nick thing was just stupid. So a lot of people seem to dislike it when Supernatural brings back dead characters. What are your thoughts on that?
See, I don't know. Like I yes, I'm annoyed by that, but I've seen a huge majority of the fan base just like, oh, I hope this character comes back. Like, there's so many people who want Crowley to come back. There's so many people who want all these dead characters to come back, and to the point where it became a meme. And
Yeah.
I would make the argument with people saying, how can you guys say the writing's good when literally an aspect that is repeated throughout the entire show is so staple, Mark, that it's a meme? I personally, you have to have reason to your characters. You have to have reason for the revivals. For instance, and if not, if you bring them back, you have to have a narrative arc or some sort of condition or negativity to bringing them back. Like, for instance, Buffy's been brought back twice. She died in the first season because they didn't know they were actually going to have a second season. And then they brought her back. Was it season 7 or season 6? I can't remember which one it was. But she was in heaven, and she came back, and the whole majority of that season is her being like, I don't want to be alive. I wish I was in heaven, but now I'm stuck. So when they bring characters back on Supernatural, they don't have that, especially in the latter seasons. The reason why Sam and Dean kept being brought back in the first 5 seasons was because of the whole prophecy ideal.
Yeah.
But every time someone's been brought back now, it's just been silly. Like, Rowena's has been brought back way too many times, even though her character has gotten a lot better over time. I did not like her character at first, but now I think season 11 season 12 really turned me around about her. But if you're going to kill off a character and you have to bring them back, you have to have a condition or some point, and there isn't one. They just bring characters back because they know it's fan service. Like that whole alternate universe thing.
Oh yeah, no. Like it depends on like which character we're talking about. At least for me personally, that I would call it fan service. But I think the deaths of Sam and Dean over and over again kind of make death seem pointless and not really like a final, like, oh crap, this guy's dead, like he ain't coming back. Like, we all know he's gonna come back. I don't personally mind if people do come back in the show, but like I just want it to fit in with the plot, and of course, like you said, I want it to have a narrative, which is like, for example, why I didn't mind Gabriel coming back. At least to me it made sense, which we can get into a little bit because that's one of my notes that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, Mary coming back was like, if you compare those two scenarios,
oh, horrible.
Yeah. I think if they gave Mary an actual plot and like something that wasn't just complete ass, it would have been so much better, because Sam and Dean could have had a lot more development with Mary instead of, oh crap, now she's back, now we have to do this or that. It's just like, have an idea.
Yeah, like when their dad came back in the Lebanon episode, there admittedly was kind of the same scene 5 times in a row, but there was more development and kind of catching up and more exchanges, like heartfelt exchanges between their father in one episode than they had with their mother in 3 seasons.
Yeah, I completely agree. I did enjoy the 300th episode a lot, because seeing Sam Sam is my favorite character. I was going to say right now, I have a complete bias towards Sam. You can call me out on it if you want.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
But seeing him, because we know that there was a lot of tension earlier on.
Oh yeah, they never got along. Well, yeah,
Exactly.
they was,
Yeah, and
but he was John's favorite son.
hmm but just seeing John apologize for like the stuff with
Oh,
Sam,
that was a great scene. I'll
that
give you that. That was a
made
great
me
scene.
cry like a baby. Okay, I couldn't even handle it, but I think that was a really great episode. And if they did that same stuff with Mary, it would have been a lot better. But I also think
Hmm.
the issue comes up where Sam and Dean's story started with Mary dying.
Yeah, she was the catalyst.
So bringing that back and introducing it into the show and then screwing it up is kind of like a big slap in the face, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
So, on the topic of character deaths, I feel like there's been a lot of character deaths that are just for shock value.
Season 12.
Definitely season
Season
12. Like,
12's season 12's finale just so oh, like Castiel's death to me is still one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in this entire show.
I was so pissed off after that. I can't even. I all I remember is just like screaming at my dad, like Cass is dead. I'm done. If they don't bring him back, I'm done. um, but speaking of Cass's death was obviously for shock value, but I also think it was kind of like a way to introduce the empty, but it kind of like in a way.
Yeah.
Uh, Charlie and Kevin, for example, are two people who I think their death was mainly for shock value. Um,
I think Kevin's honestly Kevin was just he was such a non-useful character after a while. They couldn't do anything with him. I liked Charlie's death because like oh shit people die in this show and like there's actual some risk and that was the catalyst to Dean
yeah.
fully giving into the mark. Like, it was used for a narrative purpose. Jack's death, the two that happened in the same goddamn
Okay, yeah.
season.
I'll agree with you on that.
Yeah, like when he died at the beginning of the episode and then they were like having drinks and Sam's off in the forest and he breaks the axe in two chops, I was laughing so hard because it was just so obvious that the character was coming back. And there was that comment that people were saying like, well, we knew he was going to come back, we just liked the moments. And I was like, why do you, that doesn't make sense then. How can you be invested in a character that you know is going to come back? How can you be invested in their death? How can you be entertained by that when it's so obvious what the outcome is? It's not like slightly obvious. It's painfully obvious. And that's why, yeah, if he gets brought back in like the opening episodes of season 15, he will have been brought back 3 times in 20 episodes.
Yeah, I'm gonna honestly, if they do bring Jack back in the first episode of season 15, I'm gonna, that's gonna suck because it's like God literally just like Thanos snapped his fingers and this guy was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I obviously think that there's going to be a lot of things that need to happen before Jack does come back because I don't know if he has the power to bring himself back. I would assume that the empty is the only one who can do it. Not sure about Billy though, but no, I think the beginning when Jack dies, like in the beginning of that episode, it is like a pretty obvious play. Like he's definitely gonna come back. This episode isn't gonna just all be Sam, Dean, and Cass just drinking and talking about Jack. That's not. I feel like if they wanted to make it have a little bit more of an impact or make it so it's not so blatantly obvious, like you said, a better option would be to have him die somewhere like at the end of the episode and then spend the next episode of them contemplating whether or not they should bring him back and then somewhat going through a plan and then saying, okay, well, do we really need to do this? Or is it just because we like Jack that we want him back?
Yeah, narrative weight. There needs to be narrative weight.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, of course. Back to shock value. I also want to say that I think Gabriel's death at the end was in Exodus was for shock value.
Yeah, that was whole thing.
Yeah. Now I know you don't like the retconning of Gabriel, but I hope that we could agree on this because there was absolutely no point to bring him back and then kill him 9 episodes later in the same kind of fashion. Like the parallels I get, but that was just so like
it was blatant fan service.
No, yeah, I agree. I think the retconning of him did make sense. Because him faking his death has been like a thing that we have seen before. The whole him getting captured by Asmodeus thing didn't really make sense, considering Gabriel is an archangel, you know?
Oh, yeah, Colonel Sanders.
Yeah. I'm glad he's dead, though.
For Gabriel's death, the reason why I was so upset with that is, yeah, like you said, he's faked death before. But I'll actually kind of compare this to the death of Loki in Avengers. A character can only trick death so many times to the point where you just don't give a care. Like Lucifer, for instance, right? If you just keep bringing a character back, you're just gonna get bored. So when I liked how they killed Loki, like right off the bat, and my girlfriend was even saying, "Oh, he's alive." Like, nah, he's dead. They're gonna make that. There's weight to this. So Gabriel, yeah, he was faking death and he was feigning death all this time. But the reason why I was so upset with them retconning his death in what was it, Hammer of the Gods, in season 5, was because his character had development throughout that season, like the whole switching channels, right? Like knowing your role. It was Gabriel basically kind of not accepting his own responsibilities or taking responsibility for his own actions. So when he was willing to sacrifice himself, he was willing to die for something more than just his own selfish needs. That was where his character's arc had ended perfectly. His character had come to a close. The loop had been shut. So when they brought him back and they just said, yeah, I've actually been with hookers for the last 7 years or something like that, it just like you just took away all of the emotional weight that was in one of the best episodes of season 5 and one of the best moments for any of the characters, side characters in Supernatural. So that was why I was so upset with his retcon, because it made the more and more retcons that happened, it just made season 5 mean less and less in all retrospective.
I agree that his first initial death not his first, but his initial death in season 5, Hammer of the Gods, it did kind of take away the weight of what he did then, but I think considering he's done it previous to his death in Hammer of the Gods, it could have been expected, so they did kind of have that little way out. But I will definitely agree with you that him coming back does definitely take away the weight of his sacrifice with the whole Lucifer thing. I think Gabriel's arc did have a lot of potential, though, and seeing him like talk with Castiel about like ruling heaven and beat the devil is a great example of how much Gabriel could have impacted the show. But again, like, I think bringing him back was a pretty big shocker, because I think not everybody, but a lot of the fans really wanted Gabriel back. Even myself, I wanted Gabriel back. But I don't like the way that they handled afterwards, you know?
If it had been done a hell of a lot better, then maybe I might have been a little bit less angry about it or frustrated. But no, it was just so poorly written, just such tripe, that it was a total waste of his character.
Yeah. If they didn't have like a repeat of his plot, basically what he did in season 5 just happening in season 13, it could have been so much better, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Next would be Sam and Dean's character development past season 7.
Oh, okay.
So, I did somewhat enjoy season 6 and 7, but after season 7, I think it was way better. I think Sam and Dean have had development after that. In season 8, for example, Sam went into the trials with the expectations of living, and then at the end was willing to kill himself for it. Now, this is kind of like a thing that we have seen, but I feel like the brothers, each time they kind of have like this end of the world crisis, they kind of grow a little bit more from that, and I can see how it can get kind of repetitive.
You want to talk repetitive storylines? How about how many times the brothers have kept secrets from each other, despite the fact that they have seen how doing so is never a good idea. That has happened so many times. And then same with Dean and Sam wanting to sacrifice one another. Well, the whole idea of Dean being like, yeah, I'm going to go in the box. I'm going to sacrifice himself. It's like, well, that's exactly what you were going to do in season 8. That's what you were happening in season 3. Just like that moment in season 14 when Sam and Dean had that hug. It's like, you don't quit on us. And everyone was just praising the whole scene. It's like, this would be great if I hadn't seen it like 8 times previous.
I can agree with that to an extent. But the way that I kind of look at season 14, Sam with Dean and stuff like that, I think that Sam was kind of finally stepping up to the plate when it comes to his brother.
Well, they had to. Like, God forbid. Like, Sam hasn't had much to... Jared Padalecki has not had a lot to work with for the last, 4 seasons.
No, yeah, and that's something that also has bothered me for a while. It's been a lot of the main plot has been focused on Dean, and as someone who wholeheartedly loves Sam, I'm offended. In the finale, Sam tells Dean that he's lost too much and doesn't want him to go through with killing Jack, and I think that and the whole scene in Profit and Loss, I think those are 2 prime examples that I would use for Sam kind of developing a little bit with his character. Because back in the day, Sam would probably obviously put up a fight knowing him, but if Dean said he was going to do something, he'd be on board with it eventually, you know? But I feel like this finale was kind of different because Sam, Dean, and Cass were all together and then pinned against each other, and then they ended up at the end against all odds. I mean, besides the whole zombie thing, but
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think while their personalities haven't really changed much, I think that the bond between Sam, Dean, and Cass has grown a lot since season 7, considering everything that they've been through. You know.
I think it's like an inflatable balloon. It decreases, it increases, it decreases, increases. It does happen, but I feel that the stretch of the balloon doesn't get any bigger, it doesn't get any stronger. It's just reinflating, just in a sense a repeat of just the same things over and over. You do make a good point, though, the idea that the 3 of them all had different aspects of that finale. Dean wanted to kill, Cass wanted to save, and Sam was kind of in the middle. So I did enjoy that aspect. I do agree with you on that.
All right. Another thing about the whole character development thing, which I do agree, yeah, it can kind of be like stagnant, and then it kind of goes like, it is very repetitive. But one of the things that everything that they've kind of been through just kind of adds to their experiences, you know, and especially I think adding Jack into the mix with Sam and Dean kind of shows us Sam and Dean in a different perspective rather than them.
Oh good God, they needed to add something.
No, yeah, I think adding Jack was a good idea. I was not on board at first because I was like,
oh, me neither.
No, I was like, someone needs to kill this baby.
It was a younger version of Castiel in terms of his awkwardness.
Yeah.
And it worked at first, but then eventually it actually started to become very like same note. So when they killed him the first time, I was like, oh cool, okay, let's see some. Oh no, you brought him back. Okay.
Yeah. But I think adding Jack has definitely showed us a little bit of different sides of Sam, Dean, and Cass that we haven't really seen before.
Oh yeah, like father aspects, right?
Yeah. So one question that I wanted to ask you, because I know that you weren't too fond of the season 14 finale. Do you think that your opinion on the season 14 finale would have been different if we didn't have the whole God and Amara plot in season 11?
Possibly. I still say that you would have needed more than 20 minutes to explain how this guy who went from being a passive observer at the end of season 5 to pretty much a non-committal father in season 11 to literally being the world's biggest dick. Look at what everyone's going complaining about for Game of Thrones. Daenerys is changing her whole aspect over an episode. God had a turn that was as fast as Anakin Skywalker in episode 3. Goes from saying I'm going to take you in, Chancellor, to murdering children in 14 minutes. So the same thing happened here. even if they hadn't had that whole storyline, it still wouldn't have made sense in the span of time that was given. And that's the problem. Fortunately, Carver introduced that aspect to Dabb. Like, every single idea that Carver had as a story placement for the following season was introduced in the last episode of each of his seasons. So I'm not going to blame Dabb for that because Carver set the way for that. But it was so on the damn nose that it was ridiculous. I think he tried to pull... Admittedly, how the darkness started is terrible. They literally don't even know you don't know what the hell the darkness is until the last 5 minutes of season 10. And this had another 15 minutes on it. But for when you take a character like this deity, this pinnacle figure in the brothers' lives, and you just changes a whole aspect around it just didn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. So, on the topic of season 14, I wanted to touch on some things you said in your video about Andrew Dabb, like I said I would before. So, you said that Andrew Dabb was using Chuck in order to make up for all the bad writing in the past seasons. Now, I can understand that to a pretty good extent, because as a writer, you kind of have the control to be like, I can write God and I can just blame him for everything, you know? But I feel like we've always kind of known that Chuck has had, like, a bad side to him. In, like, the retrospective things, he's always been kind of toying with Sam and Dean's lives, considering he made them the vessels for Michael and Lucifer, and didn't intervene at all when it came to the whole destiny thing. But, of course, with Eric Kripke's interpretation of Chuck, he kind of made him seem a lot more observant and omniscient and not really interfering, but definitely helped push the story along, like when Dean needed to know where Michael and Lucifer were towards the end of Swan Song. But I feel like Chuck from the previous seasons did care somewhat about the fate of the world and the Winchesters, but that's just because the Winchesters were on his side and more focused on saving the world rather than why couldn't Chuck just prevent this from happening in the first place. And I feel like what shifted was the fact that Sam and Dean just kind of got tired of the same fate with the end of times near and death waiting for them and all that stuff. I feel like Chuck has always had the power to fix what Sam and Dean messed up, except when it came to, like, the whole Amara plot. But I've always wondered why Chuck never interfered with Sam and Dean, because, you know, Sam and Dean were his favorites, as he said before. But I wanted to know if you ever had, like, the idea that this would kind of happen, that Chuck would end up turning on Sam and Dean.
I never honestly had this idea. I never thought that this would be done because I thought it was just too ridiculous. To put it into perspective, the reason why God was in the show, he's a non-committal person. He's an observer. He's letting things happen as it is. It's sort of like, you can also put this to your own, like, daily life. If you were given something all the time without any effort, and you were just given this thing over and over and over again, you would lose appreciation for it. You would just be like, okay, this is a given, like a Pavlov's dog. But if, I think I might, that might have been the wrong acronym. But if you're given, if you work for something, if you have to struggle for it, if you have to go through sacrifices for it, it makes the reward and the whole outcome far more satisfying and much more of a life lesson. So to see, that's why I feel that Chuck had set up this storyline, but he was kind of like, I wonder if, they can go against the norm, if they can go against it. They weren't really about even saving the world. They were just about saving each other. They were about saving their family. So, because he said, is about family, and in the end, isn't that what matters? So I feel that the Chuck that we had at season 5 is a completely different person in season 14. The only way I feel that this is going to make sense is if he's been influenced or some sort of last minute garbage, because it doesn't make any sense that he goes from being literally watching the apocalypse that he has set up be thwarted to, oh, you're not doing the thing I want to do right now, so I'm going to end the world. Like, he goes from being a deity to a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, really, in a span of 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm. I can agree that the whole thing with Chuck kind of turning on Sam and Dean in that episode was kind of unexpected. But I feel like we kind of had some warning signs from the beginning, if you know what I mean. Like in season 5, I know that Lucifer talks a little bit about, I can't remember his exact quote, but he's like, God made me this way. He wants this to happen,
Yes. Yeah. And I agree with you with that. I do have I have a counter for that. A lot of people have said, well, God is an all-bearing God. He's a powerful deity. He doesn't really care about this. It's like, yes, that is what is established in all the Bible and all that stuff. The thing with Supernatural was they were changing around the idea. They were taking, obviously, what is established in Christianity and Catholicism, and then they were making their little turn on it. So you are taking this entity, and essentially it was fan fiction of God. So,
no, yeah, I think Supernatural in its entirety is like fan fiction of the Bible.
Oh yeah, and if you're if you're taking that, then you have to stay with that aspect. You can't just say, oh, well, because it's written in the Bible. It's like, no. You changed it. You took this entity and you made your own version of it. So you can't go back and refer to what's been already established because you've already stated that this is different. So yes, when they talk about how he was with Lucifer and everything at the beginning of time, that's how he was, and that's what established in the Bible. But once we get to his character in the show, it's a whole new ball game now. You can't refer to this anymore. So that's why anyone who's had that argument for me, I said that doesn't work. It doesn't, because it's a different thing now. And that's basic story. That's storytelling in a sense. You can't all of a sudden, like for instance, a lot of people have talked about for again going to reference to Game of Thrones, Daenerys' turn. That everyone's saying this is foreshadowing. That there's foreshadowing and then there's development. Foreshadowing is not development. So that's what I mean. That's why I feel that people can't use that argument in its entirety. That's saying that that's because what's been written.
Mm-hmm. I agree that I think the whole Lucifer situation is completely different to the whole Sam and Dean situation. I just wanted to bring that up, see what you had to say about that. But there has been other times where Chuck has said something like, I can't remember exactly what. If I find the clips, I'll edit them afterwards into here. But there's been a few times where Chuck has been a little bit like, he says like something that's like,
I mean, that's why you're back, right? This isn't her story. It's mine.
So you're just gonna let Amara win?
It's her time to shine. I am not hiding. I am just done watching my experiments failures.
You mean your failures, Chuck? You want to write the best-selling autobiography of all time? You explain to me. Tell me why you abandoned me. Us.
Because you disappointed me. You all disappointed me.
But like, he's God, so we like, I kind of like, you let it slide, I just feel like when you have a character that has this much power and is the one who basically just started everything, he has the power to take that away, and he's always had the power to take that away. So I feel like, I think Andrew Dabb kind of had this as like his safety net go card, you know what I mean? Because
if you develop that, yeah, that would have worked. Like, look at Jack, for instance. Jack is a child with the powers of a god, but he's had development. God didn't. Like, Chuck did not have anywhere near as much needed development to suggest that turn. Like, you had so many mix-max episodes throughout this entire season. There's no way that you couldn't have introduced God like in an episode prior, or God forbid 2 episodes before the finale, and would have established this.
They could have definitely brought Chuck back when the moment Cass called for him, and he could have had them working together instead of having Sam and Dean lock Jack in the box, piss Jack off, and then...
Oh, that was so stupid.
Okay, yeah, no, that was ridiculous. Okay, I predicted that they were gonna try and get Jack in the Box, but I didn't think that like they would lie to him about that, because that was fucked up, you know?
Again, like going at the whole idea of the predictable storylines, it's just, it was so clear as day what was going to happen. It was painful.
Yeah, the only thing that I didn't that wasn't clear was the whole turn with God, because that came out of fucking nowhere at the end. And I will agree with you. I do think that if they wanted to pursue the whole God plot and him being the villain, they should have definitely at least started the arc a few episodes beforehand. You know, it would have been a lot better.
Yeah, and it kind of your question about the whole making up for all the bad writing. When Sam has that monologue, like, this is it, you've been playing with our lives, all the monsters we fought, all the people we've had die, this is all because of you. And it was like, oh no, guys, that is how if they're coming to this conclusion now, how the fuck did they not expect this when they met him in season 11? Like, why didn't they have this conversation in season 11? So I that's why I hated that monologue. I hated that monologue.
I can understand why they didn't have that conversation in season 11, because I feel like Sam and Dean were a lot more focused on just helping God, saving the world, get rid of the darkness, you know?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and I feel like they didn't really have time to really question, like, why is all this happening? But now, because Sam got to talk to God earlier, he kind of was like, I think Sam was like running to tell Dean, like, hey, we need to like go, because God just like told me that like he likes watching us and this is like kind of fucked up and we should leave. That's what I was expecting, but then all that stuff happened in the end. But yeah, I will agree that I think that Chuck, his story at the end of season 14 could have been a lot better had they previously established God's intent and not just coming out of nowhere with it. So, yeah. One last thing about season 14. You mentioned in one of your videos that you didn't like the fact that Michael was killed in a filler episode. I've seen a lot of people actually be pretty mad about this, and I feel like I'm the only one who actually liked this choice of him being in a filler, like being killed in a filler episode. I'm probably the only one who actually liked that choice, but
well, if it was done correctly, again, it's all about execution, right? But the fact that Dean gets his head hit against a wall a couple of times is, I don't know, it took that little to anger the whole situation. I enjoyed the aspect of the whole Inception inside your head thing. I thought that was, I was willing to let that slide, even though it barely made any sense. Because, you know, like, how is Dean's able to hold Michael inside his head, yet Sam had to literally almost kill his brother to hold Lucifer for a minute. So, again, that the whole episode was just so mix matched, and then when the whole Michael thing came up and Jack just ended the whole thing it made Michael already had only been in I think 5 episodes of the whole season, so it made his entire threat just even more pitiful.
Yeah, I can agree.
Colonel Sanders was more of a villain than frickin' Michael was.
Yeah, honestly. I will agree. Michael's storyline that season was all over the fucking place. I wish that they actually stuck to one goddamn plot and just continued with it. Even though I still do enjoy the episodes no matter what, honestly, because that's just me. But I think the episodes that were mainly focused on his storyline were pretty good. And I think having Michael break out of Dean in a filler episode kind of adds to the urgency of the situation with Dean, you know? It's kind of like, you thought this was going to be a regular hunt? Just kidding, Michael's out, and apparently Jack has had the power to kill him the entire time. That kind of feels like a plot twist, but I can see why it can be kind of frustrating. But
Oh, no, like I said, it's all about execution. If it had been done... If it had been more clear, if it hadn't been just so so rushed, so clearly just like, yeah, this first draft, then it might have been a little bit more entertaining, a little bit more believable, like allowing it to slide. But it was just so rushed. It just, again, it made the whole Michael storyline just so like, again, I actually even read something that Andrew Dabb apparently gave Jensen Ackles absolutely no direction in terms of how Michael should act. So when he was like, well, what's some character guidelines I should have? And he's like, yeah, I don't know, just do what you think is right. And like, you can't do that.
Yeah, I actually didn't know about that.
I've read it. I've seen it from people. It's from comments about people who have read interviews with Dabb. So I haven't had an official link on that. But honestly, that makes sense. Like, I didn't see any difference really in terms of Dean, like with Jensen Ackles being Michael. Like, there was so little to this villain. They did that whole distrust garbage, which has been done to death in this show. It's like, oh, he really hates you. He can't wait for you to be alone. He's like, he's happy he's away from you. It's like, oh my God, are we really using? Like, I swear they took this dialogue from previous seasons and they just copy and pasted it here.
Well, I can understand why though, because you are dealing with one of the main villains from the previous season. So I would expect some like pretty similarities between season 13 and season 5. Because you have Michael back, just a different version of Michael.
Oh yeah, but just like, you gotta vary the dialogue.
Oh yeah, of course.
You gotta vary the intentions.
I agree. On that note, I think Michael, his storyline was all over the place this season, and so were a lot of the other storylines. Even though I did really enjoy this season. I will agree that it had its issues. I can't talk today. Wow, it's had its issues. But going back now, let's talk about the petitions to keep the show going. You mentioned, I actually wholeheartedly agree with you about this. I watched your newer video. I actually made a video about a YouTuber who I will not name in this, but basically this YouTuber had started like a hashtag that kind of seemed like guilt-tripping Jared and Jensen to continue to do the show. I just want to say, Jared and Jensen and Misha and anybody else on that cast and crew don't owe a shit, okay? They have been working on this show for almost 15 years, and if it's time to end it, it's time to end it. Yeah, I'm really sad that Supernatural's ending, but it's my favorite show, but it's called being a respectable human being and not being an asshole and bothering the people who gave you 15 seasons of your favorite show.
Yeah, it's like what Mark Shepard said, that you can just always watch the reruns. If I can mix this in with the next question about the whole fan service mentality of the show, when I saw petitions popping up, I was immediately like, you gotta be goddamn kidding me, you armchair viewers. It's happening right now for Game of Thrones. Again, like, yeah, really, just because you guys signed a petition, you took a minute to put in your email, you're warranting millions and millions of dollars being retrofitted to remaking a season. When the petitions for Supernatural came up, it really showed the really selfish dark side of a large majority of the fan base, of how they, well, maybe not majority, maybe half. I might be wrong. I've seen a lot of people
I've seen a lot of people kind of hop onto that bandwagon of sign a petition to bring Supernatural back, you know? And like for a moment I was kind of like, yeah, let's do this. And then I was like, wait, hold the fuck up. Hold on. Because I will agree that you are right. Fans, what do the fans,
you've done nothing to deserve it.
Exactly. Like, they watch the show, they support the show. Like, some fans may support the show and others, like, I personally have been to a Supernatural convention before. I spent a shit ton of money there, but, like, worth it.
I've always thought about going, but holy God, just to get a photo with the two of them is like $200.
Yeah, I've been saving up since September for this year's convention. But they're expensive as shit. But you're right. I honestly think that the whole petition thing was absolutely awful. And I honestly, like, am ashamed, like, to call myself, like, a huge Supernatural.
Yeah, to be associated with this,
Yeah,
right?
'cause I don't want to be associated with, like, this, like, people who are, like, trying to get the show back on. Because don't get me wrong, if out of nowhere, like, they're like, hey, we're gonna bring Supernatural back, like, okay, cool, but I don't want it to be something that's forced, because if it's forced, then the show is gonna go even more downhill, you know?
Well, yeah, when the whole thing started up, it was just, again, just a show of just the mentality of the fan base, and just, one, how they'll suck up anything. Like, there's so many people, whenever I see this comment all the time in my reviews: Supernatural is great. If you don't like it, just don't watch it anymore. You're wrong. The show is great. And you need to have constructive criticism. You need to have in high school, right? If you wrote a paper and there was problems with it, your teacher would point out the problems. So why can't people talk the same about a show? Like, yeah, okay, maybe you might not agree with it, but you should still be open to constructive criticism. Otherwise, you'll never improve. So to see something like this happen with the show, and then this petition, you took 5 seconds to sign up for something. That's an infinite percentage in terms of how long these guys work. These guys work from, like, I'm not just talking about the actors, but the crew. Like, the frickin' Jenny operator arrives about 3 hours before call, and then if they're moving on to a new location, he's there for like another 2 hours. So that's an 18 to 20 hour day. And then he's got to do the exact same thing the next day. So for locations, grips, LX, camera department, all special effects, they're all there for 15, sometimes like 12 to 16 hour days. And when the show started, it was entirely a graveyard shift. It was from about 5 p.m. to 5 a.m., something along that lines. So to see people just being like, we want the show to continue, is like, honestly, go put your head in the sand, because you don't deserve it. If you've had an impossible feat already. 15. I never freaking expected this show to have 10 seasons, let alone 15. So it's very selfish mentality.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think, like you said, constructive criticism is a very good thing. And I think the whole people with saying if you don't like it, don't watch it, like, you are obviously somewhat of a fan of the show. You want to critique it, and you make some very valid points that I disagree with, some that I agree with, you know? And I think that's the
whole thing. We're supposed to be able to have civil conversations. We're supposed to have civil, like, if you just shut me out, like, what's the point? Like, I'm not doing the same to other people. I'll admit I will get a little bit heated with my debates. Sometimes I try to be a lot more civil and a lot more open about it. Like, I actually had someone who had a very negative opinion of me and a very negative opinion of my thoughts, and I was able to be very civil about it in my comment, to the point where they actually felt bad. They even said, wow, I feel like an asshole. And I was like, well, you learned something there. And if that could happen with all the Supernatural fans, that would be fantastic. But
yeah, of course. I think even though we are on different sides of the spectrum, I definitely relate with you with that. I think that it is always important that if someone disagrees, you just simply say your opinion and you don't be a dick about it, And I think, like, I've definitely been in this situation where I've been responding to comments who are like, you're a fucking idiot, like, this isn't what's gonna happen, blah, blah.
YouTube comments are some of the worst comments in the world.
I know, trust me. If you respond and you're very civil about it, they're gonna be like, shit, I was not expecting that, because it's just a whole another slew of things. The YouTube comment section is the literal hellscape of the internet. So I don't think there's a lot of civilness happening in the YouTube comments.
Oh, of course.
I want to end on that note of that part, saying that I think that we should all be grateful that we got 15 seasons of Supernatural, And even though
definitely.
No, yeah. Even though I myself am a little upset that Supernatural is on. I mean, I made a video crying about it. I can't even say I was a little bit upset. I was upset, you know? But I am so grateful for the show because the show has impacted me in a lot of different ways. And I don't really know. I know there's a lot of casual viewers, and then there's like people like me who obsess over this show like way too much. But the show has definitely had a big impact on my life. And I feel like it's time that, you know, we accept that Jared and Jensen and Misha want to move on. And I think that the best thing we can do is just be supportive of their decision and hope for a badass season 15, which I hope is good. So on the topic of Supernatural ending, I wanted to know how your reaction was when you found out that Supernatural was ending.
I was relieved.
Oh God! Wow, can't relate.
It's hard to watch this show that you've watched for so long. It's really hard to see it just turn into the puddle of mud, in my opinion, that it's become, and to finally see them like have an end point, like to actually have an end goal. One, that's going to help with the narrative. At least that's my hope. And two, you can only have one thing for so long before it just becomes this is the same repetitive track. It's just like putting your thing on repeat over and over and over again. So I was happy because I admit these guys they've done it for so long. They're so tired. And to see them maybe do something different, God forbid, would be very cool. So yeah, I know there was people who were upset about it, and I understand. But for me personally, I was relieved because I was like, okay, hopefully this show won't end shitty. Like I'm really hoping for not another Dexter, because Dexter hurt.
Yeah, I get where you're going at. I mean, I've seen a few people be like really just happy that Supernatural is ending just because they've been waiting for it for so long, and it's like, oh, it's finally here. Wow. Because the long running joke was that Supernatural was like never gonna end.
Oh yeah, I remember people watching that, and I said like, you guys are insane, but then I would just see it keep on being renewed every year. It's like, this is just ridiculous. Like, where's the money? It's gotta be from those cons. It's gotta be from some of it's gotta be from those.
A lot of money from the conventions, because I like gold tickets are over $1,000 for a 3-day weekend. Yeah, that's RIP my bank account. Well, yeah, like I said before, I obviously was upset when I found out Supernatural was ending. I cried like a baby because I love the show, but I do understand that all good things got to come to an end, and I'm hoping that Andrew Dabb does not drop the ball with the last season. And yeah, so what are your expectations for the last season?
I'm going in with none. I'm going in with none because I've had higher expectations for the show since Dabb came in, and now that his writing has not given me any hope. Admittedly, at first I understood that he was put in the position as he was, but he's literally said, "Oh, okay, fan service matters more than story. Getting woo moments matters more than narrative." So he's literally taken the easiest, laziest job on the planet. And I am happy that the brothers, like, I'm really hoping it's true, that they have a lot more involvement with the narrative. Like Jensen Ackles hasn't directed an episode, I think, since season 9.
Yeah, it's been a while, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's cool. So he's going to try to take a whole... Oh, no, he stopped. Okay. And at first I thought maybe Jared might do something, but he just comes to set. Admittedly, apparently now it is a lot easier to film it because they've done these characters so many times. It doesn't take them much to get into the character. But I have hopes that this will end. I hope this will end well. I don't think it will. I think we're all going to be disappointed. But I have hopes. I hope that they bring some OGs back. Like, I know Eric Kripke probably can't come back because he's working on a show right now, if I'm correct. But even if he could come back to write something, for God's sake.
I would love to have Eric Kripke just be there and just somewhat to like help them guide the characters in the way that he originally intended to, because Eric Kripke is the man, the myth, the legend who invented this whole thing that we all have now. So I would love to see him back.
I'd love to see some of the original writers come back. Like, I know Sarah Gamble didn't do well with season 6 and season 7, but she did have some great episodes for the first 5 seasons. I'd love to see her come back, do some writing. Someone mentioned Ben Indelin as a director in one of my comments, and he was a good director. He directed a bunch of really good episodes. Obviously, we can't bring Kim Manners back because Kim Manners passed away back in season 4 or season 5, I believe. But just if they could bring back any OG like people, that would be cool. But I just the only guy on that team who's still part of the OG is Philip. I can't pronounce his last name. Phil Sigari or something. Him and Robert Singer are the oldest directors, like the most seasoned directors of that show, and Philip does a lot better job than Robert Singer does. So, like, Robert Singer does the bare bones job with each episode. The guy, he shoots it like a Hallmark movie. I know this because I've worked on Hallmark movies, and that's just how boring the coverage and the shooting is. It's minimum effort. So I hope that they do add some. I do hope that they put effort into this, because this is the end, right?
Yeah. I'm going into this season with super high expectations, because I'm hoping that the show doesn't let me down. The finale for season 14 got me really excited for what's going to happen next season, even if we disagree on how we got there.
Oh, yeah. Stupid idea of how they got there, but idea alone? Yes, very cool. Is it massive fan service? Oh, fuck, it is. But can it possibly be done well? Maybe. So we'll have to see.
No, yeah, you're right. Like I said before, I think that the whole God card was kind of something that Andrew Dabb has been saving for like the last season. But I think he has something to work with now, and it could turn out amazing, because we have things that Sam and Dean have killed coming back, and souls coming out of hell, and apparently it's The Walking Dead now, it's zombies. So
oh yeah, I'm interested to see how they get out of that.
Yeah, I wasn't too.
Because they all got hugged. They all got hugged at the end.
I couldn't.
They all got hugged. They all got hugged by the zombies when the episode. Like, that's the last frame. You see them all being surrounded and hugged.
I was just like,
I was like, okay.
Okay. Thinking realistically, by the way, I don't understand why Sam, Dean, and Cass didn't like try to run out of there.
Oh yeah, and I remember. I don't know if you like. There's that one comment I made where they're literally, the camera's looking at them, pan from right to left. All the zombies, pan from right to left. All the zombies, pan from right to left. It was the same thing, and that was a Phil episode too. Phil shot that episode. Phil directed that episode, and I was like, "Oh, Phil, what are you doing? This is so boring."
I think that considering that we've got Jared and Jensen having some input on the writing for this season, that's one of the main reasons why I have some high hopes for this, because if anybody really knows Sam and Dean the best, it's Jared and Jensen. And regardless of how the show ends, I really have like a really high expectation for this. And it's going to suck when it's over, but like I'm going in there thinking that like the last episode of Supernatural is going to like kill me.
Oh, it will definitely be something interesting to see.
So do you have any predictions for what we might see in the last season?
Oh God, please blow up the bunker. That's something I hate, the bunker set. I understand why they do it, because it makes it so much easier. The brothers, I have a feeling that Jensen and Jared were probably behind that idea. It makes shooting days a lot faster. rather than having to do something different. But mind you, they've actually had that studio for apparently ever since the show started. I thought that the studio that they got for the bunker was something new, but it's a side of the studio. Like all the hotels that they've ever stayed at, that's a set. That's inside a studio. Certain buildings that they've been inside, Mystery Spot, that was a studio, I believe. So they've had this studio space ever since the show started almost. But they just utilize this area for it. So I understand why. Like, shooting in a studio is a hell of a lot easier than shooting on location. Location is fucking horrid to shoot on, dependent on certain days. So yeah, blow up the bunker just because we need to have some stake to it. They can work hard for 20 more episodes. And then I feel they should die. Not should, but they will. I think that's the only way that it works. Or I did have a thought with my one video how I predicted a Andrew Dabb moment where what they're going to do they're somehow going to convince God to kill every single evil entity on the planet, and that's how they're going to be safe. And I was like, oh, please don't do that.
Oh yeah, no. When I saw that, I saw what you said in your video. I was like, ooh, I really don't want that to happen. I think that the stakes would be. I think that Amara might come back, if God is the big bad villain of the next season, or if it's just like, if it's not, I think it's all just like what God did is just coming at Sam and Dean. But if the last villain is God, then we would have to have Amara back.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, because in theory, back in season 11, they had mentioned, God had said that light can't exist without dark, dark can't exist without light.
Yeah, so you can kill him.
But, you know the equalizer gun that Chuck made?
Oh, no.
If Amara shot God with it, then technically wouldn't it like even out? That's what I was thinking.
No, you're not wrong. That's actually that's actually a pretty probable idea, because it was already a Deus Ex gun in the first place. I hope that they don't. I hope that they don't like lose this gun, because you've introduced a gun that is so goddamn powerful, and in normal Dabb fashion, it should probably disappear within the first few episodes, or if ever it'll probably disappear in its entirety. But that is a good use of that gun. That is actually a good use. I admit that would be an interesting idea. I kind of wonder what would happen, but yeah, no, that's the best idea I've heard so far.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking, because I remember back in season 11, it was like, oh, if both of them are dead, then the universe is fine. If one of them is dead, then we're all like screwed. But that was what I was thinking. But I actually agree with you with the whole bunker thing. I've enjoyed them having a home for the time being, but also it does kind of make me miss the out on the road like urgency of everything. So I will agree.
Yeah, they didn't have any safe
to blow up. Yeah.
Well, yeah, like they had Bobby's house technically in season 5, but when did Bobby's house get blown up?
Season 7, I believe.
7? Okay, yeah.
For his death, because it got burnt down because of the Leviathans, if I remember correctly.
I'm trying to remember. But yeah, no, yeah, there was Bobby's house technically was a safe haven, sort of. But even then, like when the apocalypse started and all the ghosts were inside the house, Bobby's house, that was a set too. That was definitely that was a studio set. Yeah, no, you can have a safe haven to an extent, but you need there to be a risk. And I just feel for this, if there's 20 episodes, they can blow this thing up. Like that raises the stakes, right?
No, yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, them not having the bunker is taking away all their like books on the lore and stuff like that, and all these weapons that they may have in there, and it's taking away their one place of security.
It was nice having I have very few civil conversations / top debate topics with Supernatural fans about the goods and the bads of the show, so it was very refreshing to have a positive one, to have a civil interaction. I think what will happen in season 13 video, that's like one of my most watched Supernatural videos. It's also one of my most disliked Supernatural videos, but I feel it was just me calling it as it is. And I've noticed that I was a very small minority at first, but now I'm starting to find that there's starting to be a little bit, like, obviously we're still a minority, but people who are critical thoughts of the show is starting to become a little bit more apparent.
No, yeah, you're right, and I'm glad that there's two sides to this, because there's always going to be people who critique the show, and there's always going to be people who wholeheartedly love the show. Now, I obviously wholeheartedly love the show, but I will definitely admit that the show does have its issues. But I really did enjoy having this talk with you, because I think that, one, this is going to make a great video, and two, quality content, man. And yeah, so to end this, are you good, or?
Yeah, I'm good.
So, I want to thank everybody for watching. Go subscribe to Jeremy's channel. I will leave the links to... I will leave a link somewhere on the screen and also down below in the description, and I will also include the 2 videos that we did talk about that you made in the description as well. And yeah, don't get possessed by any demons.
Yeah.